We'll call the meeting to order, please. Good morning, everybody. We'll have a land acknowledgement, please, Laurie.
We respectfully acknowledge that Dysart et al. Is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. These ancestral homelands are more than a place where the Anishinaabe hunted, fished, gathered, and grew their food long before the settlers' arrival. Indigenous peoples cared for these lands and waters and have welcomed us as their guests. We pay them respect by ensuring we continue to recognize their ongoing connection to the area and by supporting the health and integrity of the lands and community for generations to come.
Thank you, Laurie. Okay, we'll now have a resolution for the adoption of the agenda, please.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Dysart et al. Held on June 23rd, 2026 be approved as presented.
Mover, Nancy and Barry. All in favor? Barry? Any disclosure of peculiar interest? Seeing none, thank you. Now we'll have an adoption of the minutes for May 26th, regular council, and also May 26th public meeting.
Be it resolved that
Minutes.
council approves the following minutes as circulated.
Mover and a seconder, Nancy and Tammy. Okay. We have a public meeting today, and it's in regard to bylaw 2026 draft zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14ZB 2025006, municipality of Dysart et al. Short-term rentals, additional dwelling units. Bylaw 2026 draft zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14 ZB 2025006, short-term rentals, additional dwelling units. I'll read out the public meeting comment from the chair. This is a public. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. Be it resolved that council hereby adjourns the regular meeting of council at 9:03 to proceed into a public meeting to consider draft zoning bylaw amendment file number D14 ZB 2025-05, additional dwelling units, general amendment to zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, mover and seconder, Carm and Tammy, all in favor? Thank you. All right, sorry about that. This is a public meeting to consider one proposed zoning amendments to the Dysart et al. Zoning 2005-120 held by council under section 34 of the Planning Act for applications D14-ZB-2025-005. This public meetings are an opportunity to present to council and the public the details and background to the proposed amendments and to receive comments from the public and agencies before a council decision is made. If a person would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person is not entitled to appeal the decision. The first application on the agenda is zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14-ZB-2025-005- additional dwelling units, general amendment to the zoning bylaw. Would the planning department like to summarize for us, please? Jeff?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Deputy Mayor and members of council. Before you is a draft bylaw to amend section 3.1C of the zoning bylaw with the intent of permitting additional dwelling units to be used as short-term rentals. As per the planning report, staff question whether the proposal is good planning and whether this benefits the community as a whole. Staff are of the opinion that this will impact our growth potential and the long-term housing supply for the municipality. And staff also believe that there is less impactful options available that I will provide at the end. So before getting to that, in terms of planning policy guidance for council, the reason for the implementation of the additional dwelling unit policies, and not to mention several other policy initiatives within Ontario, is the province's goal of building at least 1.5 million homes by 2031. In reviewing the county and Dysart official plans, both list the benefit of additional dwelling units, which place an emphasis on housing. The reasons including increasing housing opportunities, increasing the stock of rental units, providing housing options for extended family or elderly parents, providing affordable housing options, and to provide homeowners with opportunities to earn additional income. In reviewing the zoning bylaw, the definitions specify that dwelling units are basically a home or a residence of a family. So staff question whether an ADU being solely used for short-term rental purposes is a home or a residence of a family. And to provide some context there, people don't change their mailing address to an STR for their primary residence, and school buses aren't picking up kids at short-term rentals to take them to school. So short-term rentals are typically vacation rentals for a weekend or a week, but not more than 28 days. As part of the process, we are required to do a public consultation. Notification was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. We received comments from the County of Haliburton, as well as the 3 lower tiers within the municipalities and 1 private property owner. So comments were received from Cam Green, who asked if a property owner would be allowed to use the primary residence as a long-term rental and the additional dwelling unit as a short-term rental. So, and just based on my review of how this would proceed, if it was approved, I think they would. So they could use the short-term rental. The ADU as a short-term rental and the main dwelling as a long-term rental. Algonquin Highlands, their bylaw does permit additional dwelling units to be used as short-term rentals in rural areas. However, they are not permitted in the settlement areas or within waterfront areas. Minden Hills does not permit additional dwelling units to be used as short-term rentals. The rationale was that ADUs were intended to provide housing inventory as opposed to recreation or vacation use. The municipality of Highlands East does not permit ADUs to be used as short-term rentals. The County of Haliburton provided extensive comments for council consideration. The county notes that the proposed amendments represent a substantial change to our existing policy framework and may have broader implications than simply permitting existing accessory residential uses to be rented on a short-term basis. They note that the provincial, county, and municipal policy frameworks promote additional dwelling units primarily to increase long-term housing supply, as well as improving housing affordability. Through the More Homes, More Choice Act 2019, and subsequent housing initiatives, the province expanded permissions for additional residential units as part of a broader strategy to increase housing opportunities and to address Ontario's housing supply challenges. The county plan identifies additional dwelling units, as contributing to rental housing stock, affordability, workforce support, infrastructure efficiency, and local economic development. They continue that additional dwelling units are permitted across many housing types within our zoning bylaw, including semi-detached, duplex, detached, and accessory structures. The county notes that given the broad range of circumstances, the county encourages the municipality to evaluate whether the proposed amendment may enable short-term rentals in locations not originally envisioned. So in particular, the county recommends that council consider the following: whether the amendment may facilitate multiple short-term rental accommodations on a single property, how the proposed amendment would interact with the existing short-term rental licensing framework, whether the amendment could result in the conversion of additional dwelling units into visitor accommodation, whether any limitations, conditions, performance standards, or eligibility criteria are warranted to address potential impacts on housing availability, neighborhood character, municipal servicing, and compatibility with surrounding land uses. And lastly, the county encourages the municipality to clearly articulate the planning rationale for the amendment and to identify how the proposed amendment supports the broader housing objectives of provincial policy direction, the county plan, and the Dysart plan. So that's the end of the public comments, but I do note that on the council agenda later today, you will see that the bylaw department surveyed members of the public and in a separate survey owners of short-term rentals. And one of the questions they asked in both surveys was if they thought additional dwelling units should be used as short-term rentals. The results indicate that 73% of the public are not in favor of using additional dwelling units as short-term rentals. And only 49% of actual owners of short-term rentals are in favor of using short-term rentals or ADUs as short-term rentals compared to 41% against. So based on that consultation and the public input, the proposed amendment does not appear to be desired, and it doesn't appear to benefit the greater public good, in staff's opinion. In terms of the alternative option as outlined before, council could may wish to consider whether a property-specific zoning bylaw amendment would be a more appropriate solution in these cases, as opposed to an overall policy change that would jeopardize rental and affordable housing in the municipality. So a property owner, if they wanted to rent out their additional dwelling unit as a short-term rental, could come to council individually and ask council to change just that property. So that's the end of my presentation. Based on that, the information provided, staff recommend that council deny this amendment and direct interested property owners to apply for a property-specific amendment. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Any questions?
Jeff, in light of what you just said there, if we're going to talk more about the study that was done and everything else later on, do we have to pass a motion on this right now, or can we wait till after we hear more detailed analysis of the study? Or
are you talking about the surveys of the public and the owners of the short-term rentals?
yes,
Well, council needs to make a resolution today. So you could opt to recommend that council defer this, and then you could come back again next month and make a decision.
well, if
If
that's
you want to get more information.
okay, well, I'll ask if that's the case, and I'll ask a few questions here then. So the people that were canvassed in the study, were they all lakefront owners or what have you? Because again, in my own mind, I don't support short-term rentals in additional dwelling units that are on the lakes. So if the people that were asked whether they liked them or not were on the lakes, of course they're going to say no, which I support that. I don't think we need any more lake loading than what we have. But however, on the flip side of that, I fully support them, in the town hamlet and in rural areas. As we all know, the rental market is kind of soured because landowners don't have a whole lot of traction anymore, and the market's really dwindled. I was talking to John Beachy a bit ago. He used to do a lot of rentals, and so did I actually for a while. And we've counted at least 50 rentals that have went by the wayside over the last 5 to 10 years on that note. But what I was getting at is that if we can supply that, any housing's good housing, I'm saying in this market, it's a bold statement for the province to say they're going to create, I don't know how many million homes, but we've been here 4 years and I don't see anything substantial in our area for additional homes being built other than what's been done by Places for People and Habitat for Humanity, which is to me at that scale. So anyway, to add more to that, if we can add more housing, whether that's short term, 2 weeks, 2 months, 5 months, it helps it helps out with a transient workforce that would be here in the summer, would help out for nurses and doctors that are here for the summer as well. There's a lot of good potential for that on that note. Plus it's income coming into the township for those that can generate it. And I feel it's not a massive change in the framework. I still think that they would have to adhere to the short-term rental framework on that note. You know, they gotta have adequate water and sewage, which is pretty straightforward on the same platform as the STRs. But anyways, I'm in support of massaging this a bit. And I think when we first implemented this, we were going to do a study after a year just to see how things were moving ahead. And I think this is a natural massaging of that framework to make it better suit the public in our town on that note. And again, I'm also in support of reviewing it next year as well, just to see how it goes. As you mentioned, there could be some things that pop up that we didn't see. We're always trying to solve one problem without creating 5 more. But anyway, that's what I have to say on that.
Okay, Nancy, you have any comment?
I just think originally when we passed the bylaw to allow additional dwelling units on the single lots, it was for the purpose of making like a granny flat or a family member. I don't agree with any of that happening in town because that's where people have to walk to work. But you know, if you don't have a vehicle and those sorts of things, you're out of luck, no matter where you're going to rent. There's been a couple apartment buildings go up that have started to create some housing. But housing is a big issue and it needs to be long-term. I mean, having a space in the hamlet or anywhere else for that matter, that somebody could be living in year round and working as opposed to somebody coming for a weekend or a week. You're not looking at the bigger picture of providing housing and supporting the community in a bigger sense.
Barry, any comment?
Jeff, could you run, in your presentation there, your last little bit, you said we could look at it as a individual coming to council to get a license. Could you, what would that take and how owners would that be on the ownership?
Yeah, what my recommendation is it would be more appropriate for, say, a property owner, say myself. Say I had a second dwelling on my property and I wanted to use it as a short-term rental. Then I, Jeff Isles, could make application to council to change the zoning for my property to allow my additional dwelling unit to be used as a short-term rental. And then council can make the decision to change just that property as opposed to the every property within the municipality for which an additional dwelling unit is permitted. So the zoning process, like I say, typically it would take about 4 months. It would be quicker than this process that I'm going through right now just because of workload constraints, but I would say it would typically take about 4 months when we factor in the notice requirements of the Planning Act and the appeal period after council's decision. But it's not a difficult request.
So, and then we could narrow that down even a little bit. We could say, don't even bother bringing it to us if it's on the lake, right? We could have that in the resolution, so it's not allowed.
Yeah, so just to clarify, for everybody, additional dwelling units are not allowed on waterfront properties, and that's an official in Dysart's official plan and in the county's official plan. So if someone wanted to come forward on a lakefront property and make a request for an additional dwelling unit on their property, it wouldn't be supported by the official plans and may in fact require both a county and a Dysart official plan amendment.
And we've only, to this point, only had 10 people apply for additional dwelling units.
Correct. So in terms of building permits, we've only had 10 building permits specifically for an additional dwelling unit on a property.
Okay, but we could maybe expect a few more if they're allowed to rent them out. Anyway, okay, I kind of support that way of dealing with it. I don't think doesn't sound like it's too bad of deal. It wouldn't take us long to look into it. So anyway, that's my opinion.
Carm, you comment?
Well, we have to do something because people just aren't renting them because they just can't afford to lose when the renter's bad and everything else. They're just sitting empty. So we got to figure out either we look into a complete fund or the hybrid thing like maybe Barry and Jeff's talking about. We have to do something though. We got to allow them because they're just sitting vacant.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
Just a cost, Jeff. You said it would take about 4 months to change the zoning. So if the property qualified and it took 4 months, how much is it gonna cost the landowner?
A minor zoning bylaw amendment application is $1,500.
Okay, go.
So Jeff, if we have to do this, do they have to go back to the county as well, or is this just strictly with us?
It's just zoning bylaw amendments are strictly Dysart
So-
Council.
And is there any other costs?
Like other than the cost to build the additional dwelling unit and everything like that, there's no other municipal costs. Actually, I should back up a little bit. They are required to provide proof of having a sufficient septic capacity and sufficient water and that type of thing. But in terms of the planning process, there's no additional costs.
Like, would they have to provide a site plan and survey?
Survey is not necessarily, we would require a hand-drawn site plan, but they're not required to enter into a site plan agreement. No.
Okay.
And myself, I'm kind of in favor of what Nancy and Barry said there in regard to maybe we could work out some type of a hybrid system here that would help. And again, we could look at this again next year, the new council, or I agree with that. See, because the short-term rental, there seems to be I think we're always going to be looking at it. So I think this would just be another part of it that we'd be looking at, see how it's working. Okay. Is there any members of the public that had any comments? Yes, go ahead, Craig.
I didn't put my name in to speak, but it is a topic of interest to me as member of the OLT for 4 years, and all of this legislation came through while I was there, obviously. And obviously the direction of the whole process was trying to generate housing, obviously, and full-term rental, full-term rentals. And here are in a bit of a quandary because as you say, sometimes you don't want to rent to somebody permanently, but you've got a building that could be rentable. And I guess it's Algonquin Highlands have gone and looked at it from the perspective of rural only. That makes some sense to me in the overall policy, because in rural areas, you're expanded out, you've got lots of distance between owners. It's not going to affect the character of the area, those types of things. But once you get into the core of the town and so on like that, to me, that's the whole purpose of that legislation driven down by the province in 2019 was to generate that housing within the town and have the secondary units in town on sewer, walk to work, those types of things. That's kind of where the legislation was going. That's all. So I'm not for or against. You guys are the ones that are here to talk about it, but it seems that the Algonquin Highlands at least has looked at it from the perspective of the rural side, and if there's another building out there that could be used, and whether it be short term, long term, at the end of the day, it makes some sense. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay. As a result of these proceedings, does the planning department have any recommendations or comments that wish to bring attention to the council? Jeff?
So I've provided my recommendation, and the resolution reflects that. I guess it's up to council. I'm just seeking direction how council wants to proceed now. And we can go from there.
So if there's no further questions, this completes the public meeting process. Anyone wishing to obtain notice of the decision may do so by making a written submission requesting such to the planning technician. Yeah. Okay.
Jeff, is we're denying this or deferring it?
Well, staff's recommendation is to deny it. It's up to council how they want to proceed. If council wants to massage it, they could defer it. If council wants to, as per staff's recommendation, just maybe more appropriately, private property owners could come individually to council through a zoning bylaw amendment process, then it could be denied. But that's up to council how they want to proceed.
I'll I'll say we either defer it or do your recommendation that we deal with individuals. I'd rather say right now that we'll deal individually. That would be my call anyway, but
Then have it come back in a month saying that, you know, people wanting to do this have to go through the individual pathway of a bylaw.
So maybe I'll ask for a vote of hands here to see which. Right.
I have a comment just before that. And I'm wondering, in light of what Jeff has proposed today and what we've talked about here, generally, whether we leave it for a month to defer it and see if there's any more public feedback from anybody in the town hamlet or even in rural areas to see if they weigh in on it. And then we make the decision next council meeting, my own opinion, so.
The resolution, Lori, please.
It resolved that the report for file number D14ZB 2025-006 be received for information, and further that council recommends that the bylaw be denied
Okay.
or deferred, whichever.
Jeff, would it be appropriate to say it's denied and then have you come back in a month with the other process of the bylaw? Or the specific property, a specific bylaw amendment?
So if we just want to direct private property owners to make their own property specific amendment, it can be denied today. But if council wants to look at this further, and as Councillor Casey said, maybe look at the results of the short-term rental survey that's on the bylaw enforcement agenda today, then it can be deferred and we can come back to another public meeting next month. But if you're looking just specifically to transfer the obligation to private property owners, it can be denied today. Excuse me.
So where does everybody stand in regard to deferring it or denying it?
I think we deny it as it's presented, and then Jeff can advise general public who want to use an ADU as that, then they apply for this specific bylaw amendment for their own property.
doable, Jeff, just like that.
In terms of, sorry, Councillor Boyce, just in terms of them applying, like a property owner applying?
Like, just like Nancy said, we deny this one. And then come back with the preferred individual coming to us.
Yeah, so the municipality, this is a municipally initiated amendment to change the entire zoning bylaw for all properties. So that's staff's recommendation, is to deny it so that it's not changing all properties. If private property owners want to come forward and amend that section of the bylaw just for their own property, then yeah, council can deny this proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and then a private property owner would actually have to make application and come forward on their own initiative for their own property. So it could be denied, this one today.
Okay. First, have a mover and a seconder for this resolution, or? Yeah. Who's moved? Anybody move it? Nancy? Anybody else? Any seconder? Second? All in favor?
They have to come on their own. They want to change their plan.
And it doesn't matter what zone. So it doesn't matter what zoning it is, whether it's rural, they know that Jeff's gonna stop them if they were lakefront, because it's not gonna happen. Even if they did put a application in. But if it's rural, they still have to come and do the zoning amendment. And if it's in town, it still has to do a zoning amendment. That's what we're denying.
Denying a blanket policy for all of municipalities. And no matter where you
Oh,
live.
in a blanket one, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we're denying that because we don't want it in lakefront.
or should be specifically to the property.
Okay,
Okay,
right.
okay, who's for denying it again? Start again, Tammy?
So yeah, I'll deny the whole thing.
1, 2, 3, okay. Carried then.
So that was denied, Jeff. I don't know if you heard that. But the bylaw was denied.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just read out here. I read there that's for. So there's no further questions. So, like I said, anybody wishing to obtain notice of the decision may do so by making a written submission requesting such to the planning technician. I now declare the portion of the public meeting closed at 9:30 a.m. Please.
Be it resolved that council hereby adjourn the public meeting at 9:31 a.m. and reconvenes the regular meeting of council. And a mover and a second.
We have a mover and a seconder, Hensy and Carm, all in favor? Okay. All right. So we're back into public. Regular, yeah. Okay, we have a delegation here and we have John Levy here. So John, please come up and give us your update on our water. Wastewater.
Morning, Deputy Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. So the purpose of this delegation is again to update you on the progress with respect to the plan for the expansion of the municipal sewage treatment plant. Next slide, please. Next one, please. So there's really a couple areas I want to talk about. Again, the purpose for why we're here, looking at the capacity review of the plant and the justification for the expansion, looking at the process and the next steps, and then going forward, what the timeline and expectations are. Next slide, please. So right now with the municipal sewage treatment plant, you're running at about 89% of your rated capacity. When we started the process, we were around 82 to 83%. There have been some allocations that have been afforded to it, including the allocation for the extended care proposal, as well as some residential dwellings that have been still in the planning stage and not connected yet, but they have approved capacity allocated to it. When we look at this capacity, what that really means is that because most flows municipality are not metered flows, you don't have an accurate representation of what's coming in. The bylaw on the books allocates a certain proportion of flow to each individual residential unit, which is equivalent residential unit. And what that really comes down to is 1.1 cubic meters or 1,100 liters per day per system. Your plant is designed for 1,575 cubic meters per day or around 1,490 equivalent residential units. The plant was originally constructed to allow all the residences inside the municipality to be connected to the plant and off of septic servicing. Sanitary sewers have not reached all those areas yet, which is why when you look at the actual flows to the plant, you're not seeing that full capacity because it's still allocated but not realized. So what that means on paper is you do have some capacity in the plant as it operates right now. However, that capacity that is largely allocated to residences needs to be remained reserved for those people when sewers come by. So as part of the expansion process, you have the ability to afford some additional connections as capacity permits, recognizing you have to replace those allocations. So your plant right now is theoretically at its capacity based on the paper and VRUs. When you look at the actual flows coming in and the residences are connected and do the calculations, it's running about 89%, including the reserved allocations. As you provide additional capacity going forward through the planning process, as you expand the plant, you have the ability to allocate capacity right now to current development, recognizing that that capacity still has to be allocated in the future expansion. So you can't allocate capacity and then not expand the plant, because that then goes against the original process from the plant design. Next slide, please. So again, we talked briefly about the fact that you already have this capacity allocated. We've allocated current capacity for the extended care facility, as well as a few other proposals with planning right now. We can go to the next slide. I've covered most of this already. Thank you. So why this is important is as part of the planning process and as part of your regular updates, according to Ministry Guideline D5, you have to provide routine updates to what's considered to be your uncommitted reserve capacity. That means any allocations or any capacity in your plant that is not allocated for flow. And while that's important, as we talked about the original planning process, once you hit that 80% of your capacity is confirmed or reserve committed capacity, you have to start planning for your expansion, which is why we are where we are right now. So going through this process, again, there's a number of ways you can calculate it. I talked quickly earlier about the fact that if you go specifically by your bylaw for equivalent residential units, you are at the capacity of your plant right now. Because there's ability to recalculate it based on existing flows and connected users, we're able to say there is still some reserve capacity left in the plant itself. Right now, you're around 89% capacity as committed or operating capacity. So you have about 10 to 11% of your capacity left that can be allocated for current development. After that point, you have no ability to connect or provide any more connections for planning going forward. And you can back calculate out to the equivalent residential units of the capacity based on the defined basis of about 1,490 ERUs in the plant itself. Next slide, please. So when we started this process, we talked about how the process works and the phase it goes through. The first phase is really your process design, your environmental approvals. You're going through what would normally be the Class EA process for an expansion, and then into your actual design and evaluation of the system as it's set up right now. So the phase one scope that was approved was really to get through the regulatory review. So looking at what needed to be done for the expansion, that included looking at what's called your Class EA and then into your ECA process. This is an important process in terms of when the plant was first designed, it went through a Class EA process that actually included the full plant with the expanded component, as well as the original plant, which was a smaller extended aeration plant. So all the studies and background documents and everything included the full capacity of the plant. And when we discussed with the Ministry of the Environment early on in the process about the next steps of what needed to be done, it was clarified that because the process design had incorporated it and because the original drawings showed the expanded capacity of the plant, it wasn't necessary to go through it. Subsequent to that, the Class EA process is being revisited, and they've now termed it, the proposal is for what's called the Municipal Project Assessment Program. It changes the process a bit in that where you would have had to go through a Class EA process for any expansion previously, the proposed guidelines, which have been through 3 sets of comments that are now in for consideration for adopting legislation, have said that for any existing municipal treatment plant, expanding it up to 50% of its rated capacity or a maximum of 2,375 cubic meters per day no longer needs to consider a Class EA process. So as well as having in our pocket that the ministry already confirmed wasn't needed to go through it, the proposed regulatory changes also clearly support that and put you in a much better position. So that was the first scope of the phase one proposal. After that was completed, we moved on to the conceptual designs. This was evaluating the processes, evaluating what needed to be done to complete the upgrades. And that included a detailed review of all the equipment, including the pumps, the blowers, pipes, instrumentation, and existing tankage. That was completed. We have all the equipment pre-selected from the process side. We have all the tank dimensions, everything calculated out and sized and ready to go. And that's really what you need to go for the next stage, which is your environmental compliance approval amendment. The last step that needs to be done before that is the pre-consultation with the ministry. We have reached out to the ministry to set up the pre-consultation meeting. We did have a bit of a delay because there were citizens groups that had contacted the ministry on their own to inquire about the Class EA process and caused a bit of a delay, but it's not anything substantial or no serious setbacks. We do expect that the pre-consultation will go forward. The proposal we're recommending is that the existing documentation information on the lake water quality and the receiving water quality suggests that it's not a policy to receive, or it's not limited in terms of the phosphorus it can receive or the nitrogen. Recognizing that phosphorus is always a concern, our recommendation is that we keep the loading of phosphorus, meaning the total kilograms per day of phosphorus that goes out of the plant right now, we keep that consistent. So we're not going to change the total amount of phosphorus that can go out. The plant operates very well. So what it's effectively going to say is that with a 50% increase in capacity, you're going to drop the concentration limit of phosphorus to 2/3 of what it is right now, which will still be met easily by the plant, and also will provide additional assurance that lake water quality will be protected. We don't anticipate any additional studies be required at this time. We did carry an allowance in the budget for it if necessary, but we believe there's existing documentation and historic information on the lake that will support that going forward. And we don't anticipate any delays once that process is started with the ministry and we have that meeting. Once that's completed, then the formal EC application will be submitted. That'll include your process drawings, your calculations, as well as the effluent quality approved by the ministry. And that'll kickstart the technical review of the process, which is typically a 10 to 12 month process. That will wrap up phase one of the work, which is approved scope right now. The phase two process is really down to your detailed engineering. This is your detailed structural engineering, your detailed mechanical engineering, detailed electrical engineering. So the details are all the drawings necessary to support construction effectively. We have reached out to some consultants who do detailed structural and mechanical, because that's an area that we don't practice in, to get budgetary costs since we can start that costing process for phase two. At the end of that, you'll have your tender package for construction. So you have your ECA to phase one, phase two of your tender package for construction. Running the two processes in parallel will shorten the timeline. I know, of course, we talked about capacity limitations being a key concern going forward. We want to try to shorten that timeline as much as possible. So running them in parallel will save you probably about a year's worth of total time if you did them sequentially. And then phase three, of course, is construction and commissioning of the system going forward. Next slide, please. This was the original proposal we talked about for the phase one scope. This is a high-level Gantt chart from the timelines. As I mentioned, we did have a little bit of a setback based on the extra involvement with the ministry and discussions out of them going forward. But we think that can be made up through the coming months by running the processes in parallel rather than purely sequentially. So where it really impacted, it was really just on the EA decision, going back and revisiting that with the ministry with more details. And I know that ministry reached out to staff as well as to our office following consultation with citizens. Next slide, please. So to summarize what's been done currently is that the status of the environmental assessment was challenged and confirmed. We have completed the entire process conceptual design from the hydraulic drawings through all the calculations, and we do all the major equipment pre-selected. So that include, we have to add a secondary clarifier. So we have all the clarifier mechanisms specified. We have the automated valve specified. We've confirmed the existing blowers and pumps are of suitable capacity. We have the internal components for the two new filters that are physically inside the plant, but not instrumented. That's all pre-selected. And then with the addition of the change in where currently your waste solids are stored is your third process train. We have the internal components for that specified too. The one benefit that will come out of the MPAP process going forward is the original design drawings for the expansion showed another concrete chamber out front to handle your waste solids. When we talked to the ministry originally, said follow the original drawings, you're good to go. When the MPAP process comes into play, which will come into play before construction begins, it'll allow us to again revisit using the existing old extended duration circular package plant for solid storage, which will remove the cost of constructing new concrete tank and hopefully reduce the budget a little bit as well. So the pending tasks right now to complete it all are the pre-consultation, which I reached out again to the ministry last week to confirm a date for that, and then hopefully avoiding any background studies are required based on existing documentation and studies. Next slide, please. So we talked a bit about the citizens group. They did require some additional information. They had questioned about the Class EA. They questioned about the plant performance. We've had a number of meetings with them, some back and forth with their consultants. And I'm actually providing a tour to their consultant this afternoon of the sewage plant to walk through the process with them and identify why it's the preferred approach and why the ministry directed the path to go the way they did provide it. From the water quality perspective, again, looking at the quality coming out of the plant is very, very good. It doesn't have any concerns. It certainly meets all the provincial requirements and your environmental approval requirements. And that's what allows us to say that we can actually confidently reduce that phosphorus discharge by a bit and move it forward that way. They have retained a lake water quality expert. He did provide sampling. I'm sure you saw in the Highlander back in the summer, there was an article, they made some comments about the nitrogen levels and ammonia levels. Those were actually inaccurate. I did request a retraction of that based on the chemistry. They mislabeled what would be ammonia with free ammonia, and that caused a bit of concern, but the free ammonia numbers show it's well below the applicable limits, and that was addressed suitably. Next slide, please. I talked a bit about the Class E process moving to the Municipal Project Assessment Program. That's going to be a benefit not just for this plant going forward, but for a lot of the projects municipality will do, because it doesn't just cover wastewater plants, it covers also roads, bridges, and other allocations. It moves a lot of material that would be under a Class EA process out of that to help things move along a lot faster. So ultimately be a benefit for the municipality going forward. In our case, specific to the wastewater plant expansion, it reduces the amount of studies that are typically required. So you don't have to go through a lot of the additional studies, including some of the more in-depth archaeological studies, even on a disturbed site. And it also provides an extremely shortened timeline for any municipal projects going forward. So even though we're pretty much through that process already, were it to start again, your timeline would go from about 10 to 12 months or 14 months in some cases down to a maximum of 6 months. So there's certainly some benefits, and that can be taken advantage of for additional projects in the municipality as well. The other pending regulatory change that has come out, and this kind of almost ties in with the whole discussion around additional dwelling units. Under Bill 60 and Bill 98, which were passed back in the fall, they've recognized that in some cases where there is no funding available for small municipal systems, the intent would be to allow developers to provide a system to move it forward. So it would be a standalone system. It would still have to have an ECA. It would still have to have all the associated information and studies along with it. But the intent is to expedite housing development. As Councillor Casey pointed out, it's been 4 years and no houses have been built yet. It's still all theoretical. And it's not just in Dysart, it's everywhere. The housing starts aren't there yet. That's been a big issue. So these bills were put in place to try to expedite that, to try to remove some of the challenges with timelines for expanding municipal infrastructure. So working with the MPAP process, this is expected to accelerate housing. This one will not really impact Haliburton because it's not going to permit it within their settlement area. You still need to expand your plant to provide service in your settlement area. Where it will have potential impacts is in the areas outside of settlement area in the county itself. You may see these communal systems start to dot the landscape. They are happening up in just north of here. They're happening to the east in Frontenac County. They're happening in Oro-Medonte Township, and they develop municipal services corporations to help manage them and operate them properly. But that's another pending regulatory change that will have an impact potentially on operations going forward. Next slide, please. So the next steps, as I said today, I'm giving a tour to the citizens group and their consultants to make sure they're familiar with the process and make sure everyone has a more clear picture of the path forward so we can avoid any more hurdles that are unnecessary additional studies. And then we have the engagement with the Ministry of Environment to move the ECA process forward. Then finally, we'll be getting the phase 2 work on with the detailed engineering. And that about wraps up where we are right now. I'm happy to take any questions or address any comments about timeline or anything else.
You also have any questions?
Yeah, John, timelines in years to making sure we get our increased ERUs, 2 years?
I'm expecting, so if we run the two processes in parallel, like I said, if we can get phase two going in parallel, and I know phase two will be a decision for next council by the time everything's in place. Running that in parallel with the ECA will be a 2-year timeline.
Okay. So moving forward then regarding the election and lame duck and everything, we're still moving forward is what I want to ensure.
We're moving forward in phase one. So phase one will be completed by the time next council's in place, and that'll start the phase two process. But we're certainly moving forward. And we certainly push for it because it's necessary for municipality to grow.
Yeah, you bet. Okay. Budget wise, I know it's pretty loose right now because it hasn't been, your tender package hasn't been out, but
Correct.
I'd like to know where we're at for numbers and.
I think we're still where we talked about before in that $14 million range all in. I'd say with more confidence if I had any clarity on what's going to happen with the current tariff structure and the impact on steel price and everything else. I am seeing in other areas where we are seeing increased equipment costs as a result of that. My intent would be once the ECA is in place, so once we get that in place and we're confident that we're not going to make changes, we should start looking at pre-ordering equipment to keep that pricing down. So one thing we have done is one of the necessary components is your final disinfection, your ultraviolet light. It was at end of life already. It's being replaced right now under a capital project for the plant. So it'll be replaced this fall and it's sized for the full flow going forward. So one item will already be in place for it. But if we see any potential to reduce cost by pre-ordering equipment or pre-selecting equipment, we'll certainly bring it to council's attention and make a request to direct funding towards it.
Okay. That, I've always had a concern about that dollar figure, as everyone knows, because the plant
Absolutely.
was designed for twice the capacity, so the bones are there. To me, it's internal
Correct.
components that have to change, and I struggle with that dollar figure on that note. So is that, two questions, I suppose, is it gonna be, number one, transparent to council as to the tendering process, evidently?
Absolutely.
Number two, what's your timing in regards to issuing the tenders out to get the work done?
So that'll have to follow the phase two. As I mentioned before, I don't have any detailed concrete engineers or electrical, so we have to get those from an external consultant coming in. We have reached out to 3 parties who do this work on a regular basis for plants of this size to provide their budgetary costs and proposals. So we move that to council for the next phase two scope.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions, council? Okay. All right, have a resolution, please.
Yep. Be it resolved that council receive the update on the WWTP wastewater treatment plant expansion as information only.
Okay, mover in a second. Tammy and Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, John.
Thank you, council.
All right. Our I'll let it, our next delegation is the 2025 audited financial statements. And we have on Zoom, John Hickey. And here we have Joanna Park. All right, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today. I'm Joanna Park. I'm a partner at Baker Tilly in Peterborough, and on Zoom for all the hard questions is John Hickey, the manager that was on site during the audit. He's the more reliable one. What we have here is a presentation. In your packages, you had your financial statements, as well as I think you were supposed to get a post-audit letter. This presentation summarizes both of those documents, but by all means, I'm happy to address any questions afterwards. Next slide, please. You'll be happy to know we haven't replicated the entire financial statements in this presentation. We put down the important stuff that we need to present to you. So the first one is the independent auditor's report. It is a two-page auditor's report, but what we've put here is the most important paragraph, and that's the second paragraph in the report. And it says, in our opinion, we feel the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality at December 31st, 2025. So that is a clean auditor's opinion. That's what you would expect. Also noted in the auditor's report is the fact that this is our first year doing the audit. You did receive a clean auditor's opinion from another accounting firm last year. The other thing to note too, it does talk about consolidated financial statements, and they do include the operations of the BIA, the West Guilford Community Center, as well as the Harcourt Community Center, as well as the operations of the municipality. On the next slide, we talk about the audit procedures. We're required to let council know what we do as part of our audit. We review the minutes, the closed and the open sessions, to make sure that anything that's should be represented in the financial statements is in fact represented there. We do lots of substantive testing. We do random sampling. We look at management's estimates to make sure they're reasonable, and we do analytical review. We look at your main systems and the systems of internal controls for the money coming in and the money coming out, as well as journal entries. And if we had any recommendations, we would bring them to you today, and we don't. I guess I should note, thanks to the finance team here, it was great to work with, and we don't have any recommendations at this point. On the next slide, we talk about the audit is complete pending council's approval of the financial statements. And when that happens, we ask management to sign a representation letter to let us know that we've been provided everything we need to do the letter or to do the audit, as well as we ask for confirmation from the lawyers. So we need to make sure that if there were any outstanding matters, that if they should be represented in your financials, that they are in fact there. So we're waiting for those to come back. We didn't have any significant difficulties encountered during the audit, no disagreements with management, no changes to our initial audit plan, and excellent cooperation, as I already mentioned, from management and staff. And we were on site during the audit, which is nice to be able to actually get a feel, especially for a first-time audit, and you have a new treasurer as well. So good to have that. There were a couple of uncorrected misstatements. So what those are items we come across as during our audit, and we note them down and we talk to management, should they be corrected or not. We feel that our clean auditor's opinion can still be presented with these items, but we are required to let council know what they are. So there was some interest that was earned in the prior year's GICs that you actually received in 2025, and it wasn't recorded until 2025. That amounted to $153,000. So what it means is there's revenue in 2025 that should have probably been recorded in 2024. At the end of the day, the revenue is recorded. We feel it doesn't materially misstate the financial statements. And the other one is just a difference between the citywide, which is what you use to keep track of your capital asset system, and the general ledger. So there was a difference in the loss on disposals, amounted to about $49,000. And at this point, it's just not clear which system is the correct one. We've talked to management about both of these items. We don't feel it, like I said, that it misrepresents the financial statements, but again, it is our requirement to let you know. I guess I should also note there was a restatement in the financial statements too. You might have noticed it's note 2 disclosed in your financial statements, and there were assets that were found, probably, I'm guessing, in the transition of new staff here regarding capital assets that hadn't been previously recorded. What it was is it totaled amount to net book value. So the total historical cost minus the amortization of those assets was about $198,000. So they've now been recorded in your financial statements as they should be. Then we get into the numbers. And again, not going to go through every page on the next slide of the financial statements. But what we do is we kind of take them in more digestible sections of the financial statements. So the first one is the financial assets, and we compare them to last year, this year, and then we have a little trend line. When I've been here for 5 years, we'll show a 5-year trend line. It just kind of makes it a good to see kind of what's been going on over the years. But overall, from 2024 to 2025, you had almost $1 million increase in your financial assets. The biggest one being your cash and cash equivalents of $6.6 million, an increase primarily, but you'll see an increase in your reserves and accumulated surplus, and that's what caused the increase in the cash and cash receivables, or cash and cash equivalents, sorry. The other big amounts I want to talk about, taxes receivable. That's the amounts owing to you from your ratepayers. And the ministry looks at this. They look at your total taxation billing out as a percentage with your taxes receivable, and they like to see you below 10%. In 2024, you were at 7.4%. In 2025, you're at 8.5%. So you're still under that 10%. It's up a little bit. I'm seeing that more and more in municipalities. We do 43 municipalities, so I get to see lots of trends there. And we're seeing that, and I'm no surprise probably with the economy right now. And sometimes with the change in staff, that will happen too. And then you have investments in GICs, $3.3 million. On the next slide, we see the financial liabilities. The top line is your accounts payable and accrued liabilities, almost $2.9 million. That's the amounts owing for the 2025 period that just weren't paid at the end of the 2025. So accrued vacation, payables, just invoices, that kind of thing. Pretty stable, and it's just going to fluctuate depending on the timing of payments. Your deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds, that's amounts you have on hand to spend in future periods. And that's your parkland, your provincial gas tax, and parking lot funds. So 628,000. And deferred revenue is the similar revenues that you've received that you just haven't spent yet. So 487,000. You do have long-term debt, $1.7 million. It did increase this year with the addition of the capital loan. And then asset retirement obligation. This is the biggest estimate on your financial statements, and it's gone up and down the last couple of years. It's at $6.5 million, and it's an estimate of how much it's going to cost to close primarily your landfills, but there are a few other assets too. Your closure landfills and then monitor them over the required period of 25 years. There was a change in the valuation this year, which is why you see it increase. So it's your estimate of your landfills are going to close between next year possibly to 25 years from now. So this is really just an estimate that you're going to slowly see over time and have to pay for. And then the last one is employee future benefits. So total liabilities went up then this year because of that asset retirement obligation of almost 12 points. So the total is $12.7 million. On the next slide, then we see the drop in the net financial asset trend, and that's just because of the asset retirement obligations. Your assets actually went up, but then the total liabilities went down because of I'd call it an accounting estimate. It's not like it's due tomorrow or anything like that. Then we look at your non-financial assets on the next. And that's your biggest one being your tangible capital assets, $41.6 million. That's your historical cost of the assets minus the accumulated amortization. You're expensing them over their estimated useful life. And this year it did go up because you had additions, actual purchases of $4.3 million. And the addition to the asset retirement obligations actually gets put into your tangible capital assets too. And then the amortization or the expensing of the useful life of $3.3 million. And we'll see where those assets, what was purchased on the next slide. So $4.3 million, the biggest ones being you had vehicles, you had 2 new internationals this year, backhoe loader. I'm really just reminding you, I'm sure you're aware of all these items. You had roads of almost 1.6 million, the Ilman Road, the Irish Lane Road, Redkin Road, and Mountain Road. And then you had work on the bridges and culverts, the bridges, basically the Redstone Bridge and Barry's Bridge as well. So those were your big additions during 2025 to make up that 4.3 million. On the next slide, we look at capital asset versus amortization. This is a big thing that a lot of my municipalities are looking at. Are we going to run into that capital deficit? And it's important to look kind of I usually look at a 5-year picture. Are we replacing our assets at a greater rate than the amortization? So the teal here is the purchases. The black is the amortization. So definitely over the last 2 years you are. So it's important to make sure that, because amortization is based on the historical cost of the assets, right? And of course, as we just heard, everything is going up in price. So you just want to make sure you're at least replacing them at the same rate, if not greater. So far, so good. And then we look at the accumulated surplus. When you look at your financial statements, you're going to see an accumulated surplus of $42.5 million. I usually make a joke here that I don't want anyone, especially in an election year, running off saying we have a $42.5 million accumulated surplus. $32.5 million has already been invested in capital assets. So that's amounts for your historical capital assets minus the long-term debt, the asset retirement obligations. And this year you do have some unfunded capital, $861,000 for transportation that you will be getting future debt for. So that is included in your invested in capital assets. And then you do the next few lines. Oh, yeah, thank you. The next few lines are your community center surpluses, your Halliburton BIA surplus, as well as the unfunded capital or unfunded employee future benefits. And then the township line, you did in the end of 2024, you had an accumulated deficit of 512,000. And at the end of 2025, that had improved to a accumulated deficit of 133,000. So an increase of 378,000. So if you're looking at your actual operating surplus or deficit, that's what you've got. But in addition to that, then you also have almost $3 million in reserves and reserve funds set aside for specific purposes. And there was an increase of almost $2.5 million during 2025 into those amounts. On the next slide, we just look at a trend of your revenues and expenses. We're going to see the detail on that. Not a lot of difference between the revenue and expenses. And then we look at the revenues on the next slide. Your total budget for revenue was 20.7 million. The actual was $21.8 million. 60.6% of your revenue is property taxation, and 20.2% is the provincial funding. So of that 4.4 million, 20.2% is user charges. So you're getting about 80.8% from your ratepayers between taxation and user charges. In your user charges, 32% of that is sewer, and then the 22% is permits, so building and septic, those items. The other significant item in your revenues is $2.6 million from the province, of which just over 2 million is your OMPF funding. And then you have some roads capital funding in there. Some old COVID funding was recognized, and some recycling funding as well in there. And then you have other amounts, but at the end of the day, you're coming out at $21.8 million in total revenue. And then we're required to show expenses two ways. So the first way is by department on the next slide. All in all, when I kind of step back and look at your expenses, you were pretty much bang on budget or just a little bit under budget. So you'd budgeted 20.6 million. Your actual was 19.9 million, very close to budget when you're looking at $20 million. You're no surprise, but your biggest expenditure is within the transportation, so your roads and bridges, followed by environmental services, so your sewer, as well as waste disposal and diversion, and then your protection, so building permits, police, fire, at 19% of your total expenses. And then looking at expenses the other way on the next page, again, the same totals, but more by the type of expenses. So the salary and wages, interest charges, materials, contracted services. In rents and financials, not a big number there, 548,000, but it is a lot different compared to prior year and the budget, and that's because of the asset retirement obligation change. But all in all, $19.9 million in expenses. And that is the end of my presentation. Happy to address any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Pat, go ahead.
How do we look in terms of stature in your 40 municipalities you look at?
Got to put me on the tough seat, eh? It really depends. And I usually talk about it when I look at the reserves, right? You have $10 million in reserves. That sounds like a lot of money, right? But when you look at your total cost of assets, you've got over $90 million in historical cost of assets. So that's where it comes down to working with the treasurer and looking at your asset management plan to see what you've got to do over the next few years, right? And if you're going to have the money on hand. So I've seen financial statements that look really great one year, and then the next year they don't, or you hear, the roads are crumbling or whatever. So that's where we used to do a comparison with other municipalities in our presentations, but it's really hard to compare one municipality to another because it really just depends on what's going on in the background, right? How are their assets and looking at that. So that's kind of where I steer. There were no alarm bells, I'll tell you that for sure.
That's good.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, council? Okay. Thank you very much. And talk to you later. All right. Yeah, I'll have a resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council approves the 2025 consolidated financial statements for the municipality of Dysart et al. As audited and presented by Baker Tilly.
All right. Mover and seconder, Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. Next, we have our fire department report. Dan, he's coming on.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor, members of council. How are you today?
Great, thanks very much. Go
Can
ahead.
you see me? I got this done set.
No, we can't see you.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you hear me okay? Because the settings appear to be that you can see me.
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, well, I will go ahead. I can't figure out what's wrong with my camera. Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can. I've solved it. My apologies. Sorry, I've just had my regular report here for you, unless there's any questions, but I do want to specify one thing about some of our increase is hydro line calls. There's been a lot of calls that have been a side effect of trees on lines. There's been a lot of power interruptions lately, and for whatever reason, we seem to have a consistent Friday night storm for this spring here already. For lots of extra call outs like that, and it's working on multiple simultaneous calls at the same time in different directions. The one evening here in May, we actually had all three of our pumpers active, pumping water onto fires at 3 different scenes at the same time. So just give you be aware of the how busy we are, and I'm seeing the same trends talking to our compatriots in the other municipalities, the same sort of things. So just to be aware of that. Our automatic aid agreement has been set. I believe we're still getting the last process from the other municipalities, making sure that they've approved them so we can go ahead and make that agreement, which will help make sure we've got more manpower on scene. It's going to help with these things. So as I said, the trend there, our numbers are up. We're probably about 5%, which seems to be about typical. We seem to be increasing anywhere from 5 to 10% a year in our total call volume. So nothing really new and exciting that way. I'll just give you an opportunity if there's any questions from anyone. That's all I have for today.
Any questions? Nancy, go right ahead.
I just see this month you had 4 structure fires, which is more than the whole year combined. So did you have good turnout for those?
Yes, we did. And then with working with this new automatic aid agreement, we said we've been doing it verbally, so we've already had it active. So the one was very a small structure, but it still counts as a structure fire. The other one was out on Kenaway Road. It ended up being several hours long into from the wee hours of the morning through into the day. We're doing very well for getting responders for our own department, and it's nice to have the backup departments coming to help relieve and take the pressure off of our initial starts. So, yes, sorry, to answer your question, yes.
Well, again, we thank all the volunteers. It's not an easy task.
Thank you very much. It's offered difficult to get up for morning sometimes after that. But
Any other questions from council? Okay, we'll have a resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the fire department report for May 2026.
Mover and seconder. Tammy and Nancy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
great, thank you.
Our next item is the Building and Bylaw Department. We have Carl, Abby, and Jess going to come on, so they should be up there soon.
Good morning, council.
Yeah. Welcome, Carl. How you doing?
Good, good.
Okay.
We'll jump right into the building permit report. As you'll see, May was a slow year. We're definitely on a roller coaster in 2026, up and down permit numbers. For whatever reason, it's simply odd. So with the lower building permit numbers, you will see that permit revenue is quite a bit down as well. As well as the number of actual inspections completed in May. Any questions?
Okay, no, we don't have any questions there, Carl. Proceed, please.
Resolution?
Okay, sorry.
Yep. Be it resolved that council received the May 2026 building permit activity report as information.
Yeah, mover and seconder. Barry and Pat. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we have the short-term rental program, June report. Sorry,
It should be the bylaw update report is next.
I'm very sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, good. Your sound's off, Abby.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, so for our bylaw report, numbers are coming in, complaints are coming in. It's getting to our busy season. We've had some new property standards complaints, zoning complaints, noise and deer. And then our lottery licensing is going up. We've had our transient traders and our campground licenses and our refreshment vehicle licenses as well.
Council, have any questions? Okay, fine. Have the resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the June 2026 bylaw update report.
Mover and seconder. Tammy and Barry, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Next, now we have the short-term rental.
Yeah, so our applications continue to come in pretty steadily. Lots of renewals, 2 to 3 new licenses per week at this point. We've had a few complaints come through the hotline, the 24/7 hotline, with some noise complaints that we are following up with. And again, we're just trying to do compliance and make sure everyone's in compliance and with their licenses and everything else. And then we did do our 2 surveys. We did a public survey and a survey to the short-term rental owners just to see if there's some different opinions. So I'll jump into our short-term rental survey for our owners unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Okay.
Perfect. So yeah, we did for our rental survey for our owners. Most of the relationship, to the short-term rental property is property owners. We do have some residents that, are using a property manager and they're the primary resident who occasionally rents out their home, but the majority is property owner. The majority are also looking into renewing their short-term rental license. We've had, as I said, we also asked, if they currently do have a short-term rental license, if it is a conditional license. Most people said it did not comply to them. Those who did answer, it's mostly due to structures within the water setback, which were issued conditional licenses and we are following up with now with the zoning bylaw changes. We also asked about the current short-term rental license fee, if we should consider some different fee levels based on different factors. For the most part, people did say yes. And then we asked, what factors should be considered in setting different fee levels. And the highest one was frequency of rental usage, with the next 2 kind of complaint enforcement history and number of bedrooms for the size of the dwellings. We did ask, because our municipality is such different with like rural waterfront kind of farming area. Most of our short-term rentals are operated in waterfront, with the second number coming in with the rural areas. We asked if our current application process is straightforward. The majority said yes. We also asked if the current safety requirements for short-term rentals are reasonable, with the majority saying yes as well. We did ask what parts of the short-term rental bylaw or licensing requirements are the most difficult to comply with. The majority said the annual fee, and in this case, they could click multiple options. The application process and occupancy limits came in second. We also asked if any dwellings or associated buildings are partially or fully on the shore road allowance. The majority said no, which is reflected with our license of occupations and conditional licenses. We also asked what seasons do they rent out their property? The majority is in the summer. Again, they could click multiple options here. Majority is summer, secondary fall, and then spring and winter. And the majority of our short-term rentals are rented out a minimum of 2 weeks per month, with 3 weeks per month and most weeks per month coming in kind of after that. Again, as Jeff mentioned earlier, we did ask about ADU usage for the owner survey. Sorry, I lost my spot here on my screen. It was pretty split. It was 49 to 41% yes and no. And then we also, asked that, inspections are conducted through the short-term rentals with our bylaw. Some are saying the scope should be reduced, but a lot do agree that they are necessary, and it's kind of split between they are necessary and aren't necessary, I guess. We did ask about opinions on municipal accommodation tax. Our short-term rental owners, the majority was they don't believe anyone should be paying it, with the secondary, all short-term rentals, accommodation, bed and breakfast, hotel, motels should be paying it. It is also very important to a lot of these short-term rental owners for the income from the STRs for their business and household. We did ask what their view, like, do the benefits offered to the municipality? They could click multiple. It does support tourism, supports local business, provides flexible accommodation, and help property owners offset costs and creates local employment. We also asked what changes if they would like, if any, would they like to make to our program, reduce documents that they are required to provide when they apply, tiered fees, and a simpler application, which kind of go with the reduced documents.
there any
So
que-
next, oh, sorry.
Any other questions from the council? I'm just wondering, Abby, like on a weekend when you get I guess Monday morning, you hear about a noise complaint. Noise is a big factor, right? In
Yeah.
short complaints. Well, how does the process work exactly?
So we do follow up with the complainant just to kind of get more information regarding the noise. If they've used the 24/7 hotline, on the online application, we can see the complaint, what time it came in, and through the phone call, we can hear the voice recording. Through there, we follow up with the complainant, get some more information, and then we reach out to the property owners through their STR license. We have their email on file, so it's pretty quick back and forth to figure it out. If there is an enforcement requirement, we can issue fees and demerit points as well, if required.
What happens if the police are called?
So if the police are called, I can ask for the occurrence number and I can reach out to the OPP to see what they found.
Okay.
I just want to add that, so if they call the 24/7 hotline, that the Granite Kiss, who monitors the 24/7 hotline, they will call the responsible person or the owner of the property and require them to take action immediately on that. If it's a noise complaint, making sure that noise is shut down. So the STR bylaw does require them, within a certain amount of time that they take action and contact the renters to make sure that this is resolved.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks, Jess. Okay, we'll have a resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receives the report short-term rental program report, June 2026 from the bylaw department.
Mover and seconder, Carm and Nancy, all in favor? Gary?
Are we going to do the public survey? That was a renter survey. She actually has a public survey
Oh, okay.
results there as well.
Sure.
Sorry. So for our public survey, we did ask how long people have been a property owner or tenant or lived in Dysart at all. The majority have lived here between 10 or more or 20 years. The average age for the people who completed the survey were 65 plus, with secondary coming in 55 to 64. For the public survey, the majority was no, that they do not have a profession that relies on the short-term rental industry. If they did click yes, we did ask kind of what best describes them. A lot of it is hospitality and contractor and trades, and then coming in with cleaning, maintenance, and retail. We also asked for the public survey, which best describes the property that they own. So we kind of see where our opinions are coming from. A lot of it is waterfront, with rural and urban settlement coming in next. The overview of short-term rentals in the municipality through the public survey was somewhat opposed and very opposed. And we asked if they believe short-term rentals should be regulated through the municipal bylaw licensing system. An overwhelming amount said yes. Then we also followed up with how are they affected by the short-term rentals within the municipality. Most are seasonal resident, full-time resident, or they live near a short-term rental. We asked if they create a negative or positive impact with the enjoyment of their property. A lot of people said negative, with the secondary coming in with no impact. We also asked if they believe short-term rentals have a negative or a positive impact on our local tourism, and the majority is positive. We asked if they've had a negative experience with a short-term rental, with the majority coming in saying yes. It is pretty close between yes and no. Concerns that we relate to short-term rentals are noise, septic capacity, and occupancy limits are the most, with fireworks coming in as well. We asked if there should be a short-term rental limit in Dysart at all, with the majority saying yes. We also asked what their opinion on the MAT tax is as well, with the majority saying all short-term rental accommodation, hotel, motel, bed and breakfast should be paying it, with the secondary of just short-term rental should be paying it. We asked if they believe short-term rentals have an impact on local housing availability and affordability. The majority said yes. And we also asked what the impact was on our local housing availability, and the majority is somewhat negative between very negative. Again, as Jeff said earlier, we asked about the ADUs. The majority said no, with a few saying yes. We did also ask the public how they view inspections for the short-term rental bylaw. They view them as very necessary and that the scope should be expanded. We asked the public how often do they feel short-term rentals should be inspected, with the majority saying once a year and secondary once every 3 to 4 years. We also asked how important short-term rental tourism is to your household business for the public survey, and most of it said not important at all. And in their view, we asked what benefits do short-term rentals provide to the municipality. They could click multiple options, and everyone seems to agree it supports tourism, supports our local business, creates local employment, and provides flexible accommodation.
Okay, thanks very much, Jess. Now we'll have the resolution.
Just a couple of comments here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's no problem. Abby, how was the public canvassed? Was their name pulled out of a hat, or were they advertised in the newspaper, or what?
So we advertised on Facebook, and the public survey also went live kind of in time with the home show. So I did go over and post the QR code within the home show. You could scan it and it would take you immediately to the survey.
Okay, so it's a good average of general public made the
Yes.
comment. Okay. Just one thing that came into mind when we looked at establishing this short-term rental bylaw that we have, it was just to put a mechanism in place to be able to handle tough owners that are letting their property be run over roughshod on the lakes on that note. So we're just trying to cover our costs, but have a policing component in there for bad actors. And, you know, I'll risk it saying a lot of STRs are good actors on that note, but in terms of Granicus's cost, do we know what those numbers are? What it's costing us to police this system now? Sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot. but-
That's okay. I wasn't employed here when the agreement with Granicus was created. We've been reviewing it with our contract coming to an end of the new year. I believe, I don't want to comment because I don't know the exact number on how much it costs us off the top of my head.
Okay, I'm just interested to make sure we're balanced or close or whatever, because again, this is more to cover the policing costs of the whole system, not as a big revenue generator for the township.
I think it's around 52,000 a year.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah,
And
that's what our contract is with Granicus. It's around that, it's over $50,000 a year with Granicus.
Does anybody know what revenues we brought in this year?
$500 a license times 250.
100,000.
Yeah. So it's,
All right. The only last comment I'll make is, there was mention in there that the local hotels and everybody else should be paying into the fund as well. And I struggle with that one because we don't really have policing issues with hotels for fireworks and, you know, I guess the OPP is called, that's on the hotel's shoulders on that note. But again, my own opinion is to refrain from taxing everybody for it. Or charging them for it. It's just, again, just a monitoring fee for the STRs now. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Nance.
Do the hotels and motels, they're taxed at a different rate than the residential waterfront rate, right? Yeah.
They don't
They would
have,
be-
they don't
would they
have the
be
MAC
commercial?
tax. That's what they're talking
But
about.
would they be commercially taxed, like on a tax rate? So it's going to be higher.
Any other questions? All right, now we can have that resolution.
Be it resolved that council receives the report, short-term rental program report, June 2026 from the bylaw department, and it's been previously passed by Carmen Nancy.
All right,
So we'll just leave
we're
it.
ahead of the game. Okay, now we're gonna have the short-term rental inspection, septic inspection with Jess, please.
Yeah, good morning, Deputy Mayor and members of council. I have the report reflecting the inspection results from the short-term rental inspections for the month of May. We began inspections on May 8th. Presently, we have approximately 280 properties scheduled for inspection throughout the season. This number is subject to change as we do receive applications on a weekly basis. In May, staff completed 60 short-term rental inspections. Of those, 16 properties were subject to a septic inspection. We also completed 53 lake health assessments. Of the properties that were inspected, 19 of them were found to be fully compliant. Aside from that, the remaining properties required remedial action. So most of the common deficiencies were related to missing documentation, structures located within the water setback, inaccurate site plans, bedroom counts that exceeded the approved septic system capacity. Does anybody have any questions?
Council have any questions? Okay. Have a resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receives short-term rental inspection, septic inspection, May 2026 update as information.
Okay, mover and a seconder, Carm and Barry, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll just continue on here. If everybody okay for another few minutes? We'll, next on the agenda, finance, Braden, please. Oh, Public Works, boy. Sorry. And Rob's coming on. And Dave and Ash.
Okay. Good morning, council. I got my road maintenance status report for May 2026. We have construction, culverts, and emergency washouts that are outstanding on this report. For construction and culverts, we've completed Dome, Pine, Humber, Eastern Avenue, Brome, and Meadowview. Industrial Park also. Those have been completed with tar and chip as of now also. Ditching obviously on the same roads. Emergency washouts, we've had a few weekends with torrential rain and downpours, so we've been busy with emergency washouts also. Road sweeping operations completed as of June 17th, and ongoing sweeping operations in town every Thursday morning. Dust layer, So calcium chloride application, currently we've spread 145,307 liters. And we have 29,000 liters in storage as of right now.
Any questions? Pat?
Dave, just wanted to make mention, getting a lot of great positive comments on the job that Greenwood's doing there, but also you got our local roads in town here looking great with the ditching and culverts and everything of the sort. So with Greenwood's great work, I hope it sets a precedent for the future tar and chip projects coming up because they've done a great job.
Yes, they have. Thank you.
Any other questions? Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receives this report outlining roads maintenance activities for May 2026 as information.
Mover and a seconder. Pat and Nancy, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Next, we have capital projects update.
Yes, thank you. Couple things on this is the Berry Line Bridge is still scheduled for replacement next month. I haven't confirmed a start date with the contractor yet. Once I know, I'll send an email out to council, but I'm anticipating it'll be probably July 10th in that area. They'll probably mobilize a week before they can do some in-water work. And the most visible project we have in the center of town here is the sidewalk replacement is wrapping up this week down at the cenotaph, and the contractor will remobilize after Labor Day to finish the north side.
That's great. They sure are doing a great job.
Yep.
So, any questions here for Rob? Okay. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receive the report for 2026 capital projects update number 4 as information.
Mover and seconder. Mary and Tammy. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Sure, go for it. Dave, Tammy's got a question.
Dave, could you just give us an update on the Benor Lake Road washout?
Yes, we had employees out there this morning, Tammy, again. So it's an ongoing concern. We have contacted local trapper for the beavers and the muskrats that are in there. It's a 15-inch plastic pipe. So basically they get into the center of the pipe, they plug it up. It's not easy to plunge with a backhoe and a pole, so we have to do it by hand. So I've been sending the guys down basically every morning just to pluck out any material and debris that are in the way of the culvert.
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
Okay. Next on the report is the bylaw 26-52 to authorize the execution of textile recycling agreement with the Diabetes Canada effective July 2nd, 2026.
Good morning. Yes, so in 2022, Dysart entered an agreement with Cornerstone to Recovery to execute a textile diversion program. The agreement was abruptly terminated this year. In 2025, we had collected and diverted almost 40,000 pounds of clothing. I'm currently looking to enter an agreement with Diabetes Canada. They're willing to set up bins at our Haliburn and West Guildford locations. I anticipate having bins at these two sites will allow us to divert about 35,000 pounds of clothing this year. I'm recommending that we enter an agreement with them.
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-52 be a bylaw to authorize the execution of a service agreement between Diabetes Canada and the municipality of Dysart et al. For the purpose of partnering in a textile diversion program to be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached hereto.
Mover and seconder, Mover, Barry and Pat, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Can I ask Ashley a question? Just is there a reason why Harcourt wasn't included in that?
Yep, so I had sent them all of the weights collected from our sites in previous years, and they did a return of investment analysis. Unfortunately, just Haliburn and Harcourt were the only, or sorry, Halliburton and West Guilford were the only two sites that they felt they would be able to service and get a good return on.
Okay, because Harcourt does have a bin right in town for, I think,
Yeah.
the diabetes. So I just wondered if that was a reason why they wouldn't, because they're already collecting there, but not at the landfill site.
No, I tried to get them to come out there. I know even for Thrift Warehouse that's down the road from Halliburton, for some reason, they won't service them either.
Okay, I just know, and I stopped when I saw collection happening for the first time that I had seen it. And they said it takes at least a month to fill up the little container, square container. That's a hazard for on site coming in and out of that gas station, but he's willing to move it, or he's willing to let anybody move it further away, so that it doesn't obstruct the sight line of people coming out of that gas station. So I don't know if the township wants to do it, or it just needs to be moved in the middle of the night.
Can definitely follow up and see if they'll reconsider accepting at Harcourt.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the Harcourt Waste Disposal Site User Petition regarding construction and demolition waste acceptance.
Yep.
Uh,
On May 26, 2026, I reported to council a report that was provided to us from our consultants, JP2G. They had stated that they recommended we terminate accepting construction demolition materials at Harcourt. The Highlander newspaper on June 4th, 2026 had posted that we were permanently terminating accepting materials, which had sparked a petition with Harcourt residents. I had wanted to clarify that we are continuing to accept construction demolition materials, and we had not considered terminating acceptance.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to, it says in your report that you wanted, further clarification, but are waiting to hear back. I just didn't know whether you're waiting to hear back from who.
Oh, sorry. So this was before we spoke, just regarding what the petition was looking for. I know it was a little vague, but I think you'd clarified that we just want to make sure that's not on the table in the future for us to stop taking the material.
Okay, all right. And we do have, the person that did do the, petition in the audience if you needed a clarification, but you're good.
Yeah, I think it was straightforward enough. You're just hoping to continue that it's not terminated at any point.
Okay, thanks.
I hope the Highlander puts a correction in just to smooth the waters here.
They did. It was just in very small writing at the bottom of the page.
Okay. Yes, we have a resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receive this report for informational purposes.
Okay, mover and seconder. Carm and Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Would you like to take a break right now? 10-15 minute break, or do you want to keep rolling on? Okay, we'll take a 10-15 minute break then. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We'll start with the Finance Department. Braden, you're on.
No, first up is the check summary from May. Nothing special to note there.
Okay. Of any questions? I guess nothing to question. And resolution?
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the May 2026 check summary.
Okay. Mover? Tammy and Nancy? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, asset management plan.
Yeah, so with the asset management plan being adopted back in the fall, every year before July, council has to receive a report that summarizes basically how the municipality is doing at implementing the recommendations in the plan and what barriers we've encountered in so doing. So you have that report in front of you there. Just to hit a few of the highlights. So you'll recall in the plan that we set a target level of service for the municipality. Basically saying right now we have all these assets, they're at an average condition of good, and we want to maintain that going forward. In order to do that, our net operating revenue for the tax funded asset base should be 5.5 million. And to get there from the around 2.2 we were at last year, we have to raise taxes 2.2% a year for 10 years just for that purpose. In this year's budget, we did 1.5 instead of the 2.2. That would take 15 years at that rate to overcome the deficit. But it did mean another, say, $200,000 in capital funding this year over last year. On the wastewater side, it was 5.1 a year for 10 years, which we did do in the budget, and that's $74,000, give or take. So relative to target, we're at about 45% for the tax funded assets, 26% on wastewater. And as far as barriers to entry or barriers to implementation go, a few things that I've mentioned in the report. One is on levels of service. So I went through the plan and looked and I counted 107 different levels of service metrics. I don't think many or most of those are going to give council useful information. And so I think we need to take that back and look at what's in there and what you want to see from the plan and how you want us to track these the performance of the assets so that I can bring you something useful every year. There is a lot of work to be done on the back end in terms of data. Within our inventory, replacement cost profiles need to be updated, and using local values as much as possible. Same with condition indexes. We don't in some cases we're still using age as a proxy for a condition, which we can do better than that with the technology we have in our hands. Another thing is some of the assets need to be componentized, and I'll say facilities in particular. The arena does well in that each component of the building is its own asset. Not all buildings are like that. Some are just the whole facility is there as a lump sum item, which makes it difficult for planning purposes if we don't know when the building needs or the roof needs replaced or the furnaces need replaced. So we need to break those down into their components, and that'll help with developing long-term capital budgets. And I do mention that as a last point. As far as a barrier to implementation right now, we're not really using the asset management plan to build either the annual capital budget or a long-term budget. It talks about the tax rate policy, but as far as helping council decide which projects should be selected in any given year, it's not being used for that purpose. So there is work to be done in terms of aligning the plan with council's desire as far as a say 5 to 10 year capital budget. Any questions on any of that?
Anybody have a question? Okay, have a resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receives the 2026 asset management plan annual review as information.
Mover and seconder. Carm and Pat, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Next. Borrowing for Redstone Brook Bridge.
Yep, so with that bridge project completed now, we're finalizing the debenture documents with Infrastructure Ontario. I note that the interest rate is a little higher than the report I brought back in October. It's gone from 4.56 to 4.62. It's a 30-year loan. July 15th will be the debenture date. Annual repayments will be about 130,000, so 1% on the levy will go specifically to servicing that loan. And because it's a serial debenture, that will go down over time until I think it's 2056 is the final repayment date.
Yeah. Would there be any questions here? Okay. Well, head to well, a resolution, please.
Okay. Be it resolved that council approves the borrowing of funds from the Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for the replacement of the Redstone Brook Bridge. And further that bylaw 2026-51 being a bylaw of the Corporation of the United Townships of Dysart, Dudley, Harcourt, Guilford, Harbour, Bruton, Havelock, Erie, and Clyde to authorize long-term borrowing pursuant to the issue of debentures to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation in the principal amount of $1,668,000 towards the cost of the capital works be read a first, second, and third time pass sign and the corporate seal attached thereto.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Carm. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, Braden. And now we'll have administration. It's a request for a temporary patio extension, Bonnie View Inn. Tamara?
Sorry, Amanda prepared this report. It's an annual requirement for the people that want the patios to write in and request an extension from council.
Anybody have any questions about the patio or anything? Okay.
Is that the only one we're getting this year then?
Yeah.
It's getting kind of late in the season, I guess, to.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Tammy.
I mean, they've obviously been doing it for a few years now. Can we, and they have to come every year to do it? Is there a way that we can just put an extension on that?
No, it's part of the legislature. It's part of their.
That they have to do it every year? Okay.
Okay, so we'll have a resolution, please.
Yep. Be it resolved that council authorizes Bonneview Inn to temporarily extend their patio located at 2713 Kashagawigamog Lake Road in 2026, provided that the following criteria is met. Patio plan must be submitted to staff detailing the patio layout. The patio must remain on private property. As per OREG 35222 under the Liquor License and Control Act 2019, the capacity of the area to which the extension applies must allow for at least 1.11 square meters per person, and the patio must be removed by Thanksgiving Monday, October 12th, 2026.
Mover and a seconder. Nancy and Pat. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, now we're going to planning and land information with Chris and Jeff. They'll be coming on. Chris is away. Over to Jeff. Jeff?
Hello. Yeah, good morning again. The first matter on the planning agenda is the zoning bylaw amendment that was discussed at this morning's public meeting. At that meeting, council reviewed the amendment and recommend that it be denied. If you have any further questions, I'm available to answer them.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll have
Well, before you do that, what's the process moving forward then? Is there a clear path for, say, someone that wants to move forward with a zoning amendment or whatever you want to call it there? Jeff, what is that going to be put on our website, or how's it going to be broadcast to the people that want to do that, or?
Well, we weren't anticipating doing any marketing for that, but if anybody wishes to take advantage of it, they can contact the planning department. The process would be a zoning bylaw amendment application, so anybody watching today can contact the planning department. We can outline the zoning process, and that it would have to go to council, and that ultimately council would make the decision.
So Jeff, just to clarify, this doesn't go against our official plan now? I thought
There's arguments that it's going against the official plan in terms of the direction in our official plan to provide affordable housing, rental housing. But an argument could be made either way.
So if I was to come in tomorrow and say, I want to amend my zoning to allow additional dwelling unit for a short-term rental, we're not going to say, no, that's against the official plan. We're going to start the procedure.
That's right. Well, we'd bring it to council, and then council's just decision maker. We would do a planning report based on each specific property and look at them on a case-by-case basis to make sure there's not any impacts on surrounding properties, but there's no strong policy saying no.
Okay.
Okay. No further questions? Okay. Resolution, please.
Well, I'm supposed to read that. Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-53, being a bylaw to amend section 3.1C of the zoning bylaw 2005-120 to permit additional dwelling units to be used as short-term rentals, be denied.
Mover and a seconder. Nancy and Barry. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, Jeff.
Yeah, this next item is a zoning amendment to remove the holding provisions for the lands of Total Site Services. In May 2018, council approved the rezoning of the subject property from the rural type 1 zone to the disposal industrial zone, subject to holding provisions. The holding provisions were applied at the time to require the issuance of an environmental compliance approval through the Ministry of Conservation and Parks prior to the use of the septic spreading operation. So the removal of this holding provision today is largely administrative and technical because the owner has obtained and continues to maintain that environmental compliance approval through the province. We did provide notice as required by the Planning Act. No concerns were received, but the County of Haliburton did submit comments noting that they would like to be provided a copy of the decision. In terms of a recommendation, the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement. It generally conforms to the Dysart official plan and is appropriate and represents good planning. Therefore, it is recommended that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? Okay. Resolution, Jeff?
Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-54, which is an amending bylaw to remove the holding provision from bylaw 2018-25 for the lands of Total Site Services, which consists of lot 25, concession 3, in the geographic township of Dysart in the municipality of Dysart et al., which would change the zoning from disposal industrial withholding provision to just the disposal industrial zone. Be it read a first, second, and third time, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
Mover and seconder, Carm and Tammy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, the application to exchange shore road allowance for a road allowance.
Yes, thank you. So bylaws 2026-55 and 56 are designed to facilitate the conveyance of the shore road allowance in front of the lands of Auger and Grant Auger on Haliburton Lake. In exchange, the municipality will be receiving a road allowance for Dignan Road, which currently bisects the property. The notice requirements are complete. General comments, as usual, have been provided from the county, which will be provided to the applicant. To recognize, just in terms of costs, to recognize the exchange of land, the administration fee and land costs are waived for this application, and the municipality will be required to pay its own legal fees. All other costs will be at the expense of the applicant. Subject to any questions from council, staff recommend approval of both bylaws.
Questions? Of a resolution, please?
Bear with me here. Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-55, which is a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the original shore road allowance in front of lot 14, concession 3, in the geographic township of Harborne, in exchange for a road allowance for Dignan Road, described as part of lot 62, registered plan 331, be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto. And further, that bylaw 2026-56, which is a bylaw to deem lot 62 on plan 331 in the township of Harborne, not to be within a plan of subdivision for the purpose of section 50, subsection 3 of the Planning Act, as amended, be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto. This bylaw is intended to allow lot 62 on registered plan 331 to merge with the shore road allowance, which was closed pursuant to bylaw 2026-55.
Okay, mover and seconder, Barry and Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Application to purchase the shore road allowance.
Yeah, so this is a draft bylaw in front of council, which is designed to facilitate the conveyance of a shore road allowance in front of the lands of T and Lynn on Little Redstone Lake. Unfortunately, we did not receive a survey in time to complete the bylaw for the agenda. So staff are recommending deferral of this bylaw until we have that registered plan.
Okay. So that would be the resolutions. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Be it resolved that the bylaw be deferred until a registered survey is received.
Okay. Mover and seconder. Barry and Pat, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And the application to purchase original shore road allowance and deeming bylaw.
Yeah, so this is a new application made by Skyridge Homes Limited, who have applied to purchase the shore road allowance in front of their property on Halliburton Lake. As per the survey provided, and I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up the application. The dwelling you can see is partially located on the shore road allowance, but it was originally built in 1960 and reconstructed in 2022. So its location is recognized by section 3.2.7 of our official plan. It should be noted, and if you look at the pictures, there's a fence along the north property line that extends into the water setback. And that fence doesn't appear to comply with the 1.2 meter height restriction for fences within the water setback. So in terms of fences, there's only two places so our zoning bylaw only regulates two instances of fence height, and that's within the water setback and within the front yard of commercial properties. So staff recommend a condition that fence be brought into compliance. But other than that, subject to any questions you may have, staff recommend approval of this application and request permission to process it.
How much does the fence have to change there, Jeff? Sorry.
Well, we're only doing a visual review of the height, but it does appear to be taller than 1.2 meters. So the height within the setback, it looks like only a foot or two have to be removed from the height. Alternatively, they could apply for a minor variance. There's other ways to bring it into compliance. And the conditions worded that way that they can try and do a Planning Act approval process or remove it.
Well, I guess we can't do anything about it, but I hate the thoughts of even making them remove it. It looks, I don't know what the neighbors think of it or whatever. I'm sure they like it too, but anyway, if they can do a minor variance, I guess that's what they'll have to do.
Sounds like a minor variance is the way to go with that one.
Yeah, and the intent of that policy is just so that fences aren't blocking neighbors' views from looking down the lake. But yeah, the minor variance would be appropriate approval process, and the neighbors would be circulated to be able to provide input at that time.
Just a quick question on it. Like, would it not be that they just have to take 2 boards off?
Well, and it will be up to the applicants how they want to proceed. They could simply bring it into compliance if they don't want to apply to keep it. Yeah, we'll provide the resolution to the applicants, and we can answer any questions they have about how they can bring it into compliance. But yeah, they could simply remove a couple boards.
Okay, resolution, please, Jeff.
Be it resolved that council approves for processing an application by Skyridge Homes Limited to purchase a portion of the shore road allowance along the shore of Halliburton Lake in front of Lot 16, Concession 10, in the geographic township of Harborne. The fence shall be removed or brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw, and these lands are declared surplus.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Nancy. All in favor? Barry, thank you. And severance proposal and easement.
Yes, thank you. So the last item is an application for a severance proposal that proposes to sever the subject property to create one severed lot and one retained lot. So they're looking to create turn this into 2 lots. The proposed severed lot will continue to operate as a self-service storage facility within the highway commercial zone. Commercial operations will be subject to an updated site plan agreement and zoning amendment to implement the appropriate mitigation measures between commercial and residential uses. The retained lot is designed to be a residential or rural residential use. The application proposes to continue using the existing shared driveway for access for both properties. So the applicants will need to apply for a consent application or at least provide ways for an easement to ensure that both the severed and retained properties, have legal access. The applicants must also demonstrate that the existing dwelling complies with the required setback to the newly created interior side lot line. But other than that, it seems fairly straightforward. And again, we're just a commenting agency, providing comments to the county who are the approval authority. But I'm happy to, there are one set of comments received, and I should mention those. So there's no circulation requirements under the act because we are a commenting agency, but the county did provide comments. And they noted that in the rural lands, the county requires a minimum lot area of 0.8 hectares, which is about 2 acres, for rural residential uses. Eagle Lake Road is classified as a Class B county road, and new lots typically require about 135 meters of frontage. Lesser frontages can be permitted on a case-by-case basis if it is locally appropriate, and we can accommodate appropriate sightlines, or the county can accommodate appropriate sightlines. Staff recommend that council support the general principle of the severance proposal, and again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, resolution, Jeff, please.
Be it resolved that council support the general principle of a severance proposal for file number D00-SV-2026-005 for the lands of Macaulay, Metcalf, and Scarfone, subject to the conditions outlined in the planning report.
Okay, mover and seconder. Tammy and Nancy. All favor? Carried, thank you. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have reports and recommendations from the local agencies, boards, and committees. Harcourt, Tammy?
No, I have nothing to report.
Okay. West Guilford, Carm?
Nothing really well, just getting ready for fireworks next Wednesday.
Okay, great. And Nancy from the Rails End Gallery?
Rails End have a summer student for 9 weeks. Lovely girl. She goes to Trent University. The Halliburton Sculpture Exhibition launched, and I think there was some damage to actually to a few of the sculptures over the last couple of days.
Heard that.
Plein Air, it goes from September to November, so that's a big event. The Culture Days Ontario, Rails End is actually represented on Culture Day Ontario Hub, led by the Arts Council. So there's lots of that, just getting all ready for the Art in the Park and hoping that they get their grant for their new entrance.
Right, we'll have a resolution, Lori.
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the June 2026 Rails End Gallery and Arts Center report.
Mover and seconder, Tammy and Pat, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Halliburton BIA, Pat?
Yeah, well, nothing major. They're picking out some new banners to put up, coming up. So the Remembrance Day banners will be coming down in the near future. New banners will be going up the main street. Of course, everyone's seen the new flower pots are up and flowers are looking pretty good there on that note. And everybody's happy to get these sidewalks, redone and cleaned up. So anyway, that's what I have to report on that. They're working away at, planning for the Midnight Madness coming up. So, anyways, still a great committee doing good things there. So.
And anything to report from the Harvest Halliburton?
Have anything on to report? Well,
No problem. I don't have anything to report on the Kawartha Halliburton Source Protection Authority and Upper Trent.
No, and I have nothing to report.
Emmy, okay. Lee Park and Museum Committee, nothing there to report to Mariners. Sorry about that.
No.
Report. Okay. A resolution then on the. Okay, sorry. So cultural resources, yeah, we just need a resolution for the minutes, please.
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the minutes from the May 28th, 2026 Cultural Resources Committee as information.
Mover and a seconder. Tammy and Nancy, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we'll have a resolution to go into close.
Be it resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting at 11:27 to discuss matters pursuant to section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended pertaining to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land in the township of Dysart, lands of Dysart et al., County Road 21, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land in the township of Dudley, lands of Williams, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land in the township of Dysart, municipal property, Wallings Road and Halbium Crescent, litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board by law enforcement matter.
Okay, we'll move into seconder. Nancy and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Is there any notice of motion anybody has?
Yeah, Walt, I've got one, the Old Eagle Lake Road. We need to get this nailed down. I know we've been dealing with lawyers and everything else and, we have to get a survey done, which we've had looked at. We've had a cost analysis on the survey. It's been presented to Jeff. He doesn't know what to do with it. So I'd like to report to come back next month. Or look at least next month to see whether we gotta get the survey so we can get this done. It's the last piece of the puzzle. And I know our lawyer's been gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And he's just too busy. So if he can't do this, I think we should, maybe look into somebody else that can. Like this has been 3.5 years at this point. We've gone nowhere with it. So if we need to get a second lawyer to get this finished, I'd like this. I'd like some options anyway, so if they could look at that for next month, that'd be great.
Okay.
Oh. Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-57 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting held on June 23rd, 2026 be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
All in favor?
A mover and
Mover and seconder, Barry and Pat, and all in favor?
And be it resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting held on June 23rd, 2026 at 1:59 PM. And a mover and second.
Mover and seconder, Karam and Tammy, and all in favor? Carried. Thank you.